Hi, it's Dr. Greg Jantz. Today I want to explore with you, it's a difficult topic. It's a topic of grief and just understanding the stages after there's been a significant loss. And through the years, we've had the opportunity through the last 40 years of working with folks who've really suffered significant loss. Loss comes in many different forms. There's loss of a relationship. There's a unexpected death, an accident. There's a slow chronic disease condition that results in death. There's the grief for a young child of losing a brother or sister. There's the grief of moving and not feeling attached to where you've gone. So when I talk about grief, it covers a wide variety of experiences. I wanted to share the first, any grief you go through. These are the five kind of universally understood stages, but they're important to review. There's the denial when there's a sudden loss or there's a loss that you knew was coming. There's the denial. There's the shock. And what it looks like is this. I made a note of feeling numb and in disbelief. What? And then there's just the shock and that numbness is the word that's used a lot. I feel numb. Why does this happen? The mind has a way of protecting us from overload. And trauma, a loss, is a significant initial overload. And the numbness, in a way, keeps us from some emotional overwhelmness. When you're in the denial stage, one of the ways to cope is we're just going to allow ourselves the time and tell ourselves that I'm in shock, but I'm going to allow the time to pass. You may notice a disruption in sleep. You may notice a disruption in how you eat, your appetite, your sleep. It is shocking, and the denial is really the first phase, and it's a protecting phase. Number 2, anger. And anger, as we move through denial, and it's kind of like a wave. One day you may feel okay, and the next day, no, you don't feel good at all. But it's that feeling of being frustrated. It's a feeling of, you just don't know where to put it all. There may be the feeling of resentment. During the anger, we may look for a place to blame and put, it was the hospital's fault. It's the doctor's fault. And the anger can be really intense. Sometimes we move to blaming ourselves. There's the, if I would have only, this wouldn't have happened. So stage 2 is anger. How do you cope? There's times that we need to let some of that out. If we don't, we may turn it on ourselves. We may turn it on others. We may become self-destructive because the anger can be very, very intense. Anger, unlike denial, helps us bring back somewhat that sense of some control. I'm angry. I'm fighting for some control here. This is really, really painful. I just want to acknowledge that. Number 3 is the bargaining phase. Then what's that look like? Well, it's where you go, if I would have only done this or this, God, if you just bring back my loved one, I will. And it's kind of like making a deal. As we look, why does this happen? Why do we do this bargaining? And again, it's a way of trying to get a different outcome. I can't, this is so overwhelming. I'm so angry. But bargaining is a way to, I'm trying to get a different outcome. It's an outcome that really we know is not going to happen, but it's an outcome that we're desiring. All right. How do you cope? Bargaining is a part of this process. If you can realize you're doing it in all the intensity, it's okay, because you're moving through an important stage of, ultimately, of acceptance. All right, what does it look like? What's the next stage? What's the next stage look like? Depression, sadness, deep withdrawal, total loss of motivation. You are depressed. And it feels at times pretty deep. This is our fourth stage. We really do. We're in, at times it feels like despair. Why does this happen? Well, this is a stage before acceptance that really lets us feel the depth of the pain and the depth of the emotion. That's why it's there. It's hard. It's really hard. And the depression does feel like times despair, despondency, overwhelming. And I mentioned, here's the last one. It's acceptance. We come to acceptance, and here's what we look for. We're trying to find peace again. We're trying to adjust to a whole new reality. So we're entering into some grief, and we're entering into, I have to go on. I will go on. How do I do that? So that's acceptance. It's a sign that you're moving forward. And how to cope? This is where we have some energy to start being of service to others. This is where we feel some compassion come back. This is where we develop a new sensitivity to what others are going through. This is where we're probably plugging in a grief, loss, some kind of support group. Sometimes if we haven't done that well, we may be struggling with addiction. We may have turned to alcohol, for example. And there's times because of grief, we need to seek some outside help and support. There's some times where this is very, very intense. All right. Grief is complex. It's deeply personal. These are standard stages, but it's unique. Sometimes we spend more time in one stage, and grief is a process that's going to take a while, but that's what's different for everybody. And we can not only survive, but we can walk through grief with a new sensitivity. And I think ultimately it helps us refine our sense of purpose. And we will probably find a new sense of belonging with others who have gone through this. 5 stages of grief. Significant loss is very difficult. Just know that these are predictable stages of grief, and know that there is an end point to the intensity of the pain. There's some more information here in my article, but I really wanted just to have a moment to share how important this is and make a decision. I am going to walk through it. I don't know how, but I'll find the help and whatever I need to do so. It is worth it.